Hi guys, I'm Stefan, and in this video I want to talk to you about the magic of the circle of fifths, why it's so important to understand it, and how it can be beneficial to you. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already done so, and if you like what you see, give this video a thumbs up. If you're any kind of a musician, I'm sure at some point or another you've heard about the circle of fifths, or you've seen this lovely chart which pops up in so many music websites and music books and everywhere really. It's just all around us because it's a very fundamental representation of Western music and relationships in Western music. In this video I'm going to talk about the two most important functions of the circle of fifths. The first one is understanding keys and key signatures and scales, and the second one is understanding relationships between keys, between chords, and also using it as a compositional tool for modulations and chord progressions. So let's dive into the first one. Now, the circle of fifths has been around for a very long time. It's not something that was invented, it's more something that was written down or put into a form, because obviously it's a visual representation of the different keys of music. The circle of fifths only really works with the 12th tone equal temperament, because if you go out of that, then it doesn't quite match up. But obviously nowadays we all play music in 12th tone equal temperament, or most of us, so it is really handy. It was also used, by the way, in the Baroque period as a tuning method where keyboard instruments were tuned in perfect fifths. So the fifth was always a just interval, and the other ones were kind of made to fit in between. So what the circle is, it basically places all the 12 major and minor scales or keys into a circle where each key is exactly a perfect fifth away from each other. The top of the circle, if we put there a C, which is going to be our C major scale, or the key of C, we have to understand that every major scale follows the same formula, which is tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone, or whole step, half step, whole, half step. Now, a half step is basically the very next key. These are all half steps, and a whole step is basically two half steps together. So that's a half step, that's a half step, so that's a whole step because there's one key between them, counting all black and white keys. Now, if I create my C major scale, whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, and half step. That's my C major scale. And as you can see, it doesn't have any black keys, so it's all white keys. And that's why C major doesn't have any flats or sharps. Now, if I go a perfect fifth to the right, or going up on the keyboard, a perfect fifth is either 5 notes in the scale, or it's going to be 7 half steps. So starting on C, the first half step is C sharp, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and 7th. So I get to G, or the 5th note of the scale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's a perfect fifth. So if I go from C, a perfect fifth, up to G, I get the next key, which is G major. Now let's try to do the same formula for G major as well. So starting on the G, whole step, half step, whole step, but now I need another whole step. But look, the next note, the next white key is only a half step away, the F. So I need to sharpen it, and it becomes an F sharp, and then I need a half step, which is the G. And this is exactly why G major has an F sharp, because it has to comply with or fulfill the major formula. And in order to get that whole step there, we need to sharpen the F. So I went up a perfect fifth, I got to G, and G has 1 sharp. Now you can predict what's happening next. If I go up another fifth, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I get to D major, which is gonna have 2 sharps. And then if I go up another fifth, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I'm gonna get to A major, which has 3 sharps. If I go up again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I get to E major, which has 4 sharps, and then up another fifth, B major, 5 sharps, and up another fifth, we get to F sharp major, which has 6 sharps. And that's what happens if you go clockwise on the circle of fifths. Every single step, you're going to add another sharp. What happens if I go down, or if I go counterclockwise? The same thing happens, but instead of sharps, we're going to add flats. So if I start on C, and I go down 7 half steps, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, a perfect fifth, I get to F major, which has 1 flat. If I go down another perfect fifth, I get to B flat, which has 2 flats, E flat, which has 3 flats, A flat, which has 4 flats, D flat, which has 5 flats, and G flat, which has 6 flats. Now this is where the circle kind of closes down because we end up with 6 flats and 6 sharps. Now the important thing here is that on the piano or any keyboard instrument, if you play the F sharp major scale and then you play the G flat major scale, is the exact same scale. So we call these enharmonics. The same scale can be written with 6 sharps and 6 flats. So that's where the circle kind of meets the two sides of the circle and they become one. And this means that if you start on C and you go all the way to F sharp, then you switch to G flat and you go up, 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 you're going to get back to C after moving in fifths. This is how you basically complete the circle and get all those keys, and that's the relationship between them. When you look at the circle of fifths, all you can see is that it has A major, for example, has 3 sharps and E major has 4 sharps, but you don't know which are the 3 sharps. So the easiest way to figure that out is that you have to remember that the first sharp is always F and the first flat is always B. So let's see an example. If we are in the key of A major, and we know it has 3 sharps, you're going to find F on the circle of fifths and then use the first 3 letters. So F, C, G, and those are the 3 sharps of A major. For B major, for example, which has 5 sharps, you do the same. F, C, G, D, A. And that's how you get the sharps of each key. You go basically in the circle clockwise and starting on the F. If you do the same for the flats, you have to start on B and go anti-clockwise. For example, D flat major has 5 flats, so you're going to start on the B flat and go anti-clockwise. So B flat, E flat, A flat, D flat, and G flat. And that's how you get the flat. So the circle not only shows you how many sharps and flats the keys have, but it also shows you which are the exact flats and sharps. And this is the most important aspect of the circle of fifths, that you can work out all the keys and all the keys are put into a very nice system where you can see the relationship between them. Now, this was just the outer layer of the onion, which is the major scales, but we know that there are also 12 corresponding minor scales or minor keys. And these are called relative minors. I like to call them partners because they share the same key signature. So each major has a relative minor and they share the same key signature, and these 2 keys are a minor third or 3 half steps away from each other. So if I'm in C major and I go down or to the left 3 half steps, 1, 2, 3, I get to A minor. So A minor is going to be the relative minor of C major, and they share the same key signature of nothing, no sharps and no flats. I can do the same for A major. I come down 3 half steps and I get to F sharp. So F sharp minor is going to have the same key signature as A, which is 3 sharps. And that's how the relationship between minors and majors work. And now you can see that the circle is complete, the outer and inner layer, which is the major and minor scales. Now you can either memorize the circle of fifths, or you can have it as a cheat sheet with you, and you can always work out your scales and key signatures. But you can also use the piano and go up in fifths. And you know, every time you go up a fifth, you're going to add a sharp, or every time you go down a fifth, you're going to add a flat starting on C. Now let's move on to the second very important aspect of the circle of fifths, which is relationships between keys and chords and harmony and modulations. Now if you look at the circle of fifths, you can see that we have C major. On the 2 sides we have F and G, then we have B flat and D, and we have E flat and A. So the further we go away, the more sharps and more flats we get. Now in music, very often we modulate. So we start off, for example, in C major, and by the middle of the piece we end up in G major, and we might go back to C major in the end, or we might not, but that's called a modulation, when the tonal center changes to a different key. And if you change from a key to another key, which are very closely related, it's going to sound kind of smooth and natural. But if you modulate to a key which is very far away, it's going to seem very abrupt and it doesn't feel right. It creates a different feeling. And on the circle of fifths, the closer a key is to the key where you are in, the easier it's going to be to modulate. So for example, if you are in C major and you want to modulate to G major and back to C, it sounds like you haven't even left your key. And that's because the two keys use the same set of keys except for the F sharp, which is in G major. If I move to a very far away key, for example, D flat or B major, it's going to sound quite different. So C, it doesn't feel like it's moving, it feels like it's jumping somewhere else. Right now, I'm just basically changing the chord, but imagine if a melody and entire section of a music abruptly moves to a very far away key with a whole different set of notes, it's going to feel very strange and not quite so smooth. So if you're writing a song or a piece of piano music, then you can use the circle of fifths and pick the closest keys to the original key, and that way the modulation is going to feel smoother and nicer. Now this applies not just to the majors but also to their relative minors. If you look at the circle again, you can see that C, the two neighbors are F and G, and the three lower neighbors are A minor, D minor and E minor. So if I play all of these chords, they're still going to feel like they belong to the same place. So for example, C major, A minor, F major, D minor, G major, and C. So they kind of nicely blended into each other because they're very closely related keys. So apart from modulations, you can also use this to create chord progressions. The closer the keys or the chords are to each other, the smoother and more coherent it's going to feel. Like if you want to create a 4-chord progression, you have to pick usually from these 6 if you want to create that very smooth feeling. Now this doesn't mean that if you go far away, it's not going to sound good, but it's not going to be a smooth transition. It's going to be a more abrupt transition, which you might want to choose for, a special effect or something more dramatic. The final and one of the most fun aspects of the circle of fifths that I want to talk about is the diatonic circle of progressions. Now, this one is a very fancy word, but as you could see in the circle of fifths, we have all 12 keys, so chromatic, every black note and every white key. But if I am in the key of C major, I only have white keys. So if I build a chord on each of these notes, C, D minor, E minor, F major, G major, A minor, B diminished, and C, these are my 7 chords of C major. So I can create a circle of fifths using only these chords. They're not going to be all perfect fifths, but they're still going to be fifths. And this is called the circle of fifths progression. You can see the new chart here. And this has been used in every genre of music from the early Baroque all the way to pop music nowadays. Now let me show you a small extract, which is from Mozart's C major sonata, which has a few lovely broken chords, and we'll have a look at the chords after I played it. So that just seemed like a bunch of broken chords, but let's see what happens here with the chords. The first chord is a G major. If I move down a fifth, I'm going to get to C major. If I move down another fifth, I'm going to get to F sharp diminished. If I move down another fifth, I'm going to get to B minor. Another fifth down, I'm going to get to E minor. Down another fifth to A minor. Down another fifth to D major. And back to G. So the circle completed, and I just basically moved down by fifth every single time. And you can see that I stayed within the key. That's why I get a diminished chord, and that's why not every single fifth is a perfect fifth, but they're still fifths. This is called a diatonic circle of fifths because I'm using the set of keys in my own key, in the key of the piece, but I'm still using the interval of the fifth to move between chords. Now, this is not just in classical music, it's in so many pop songs. Here is a very famous example, which is I Will Survive. First I was afraid, I was petrified. Kept thinking I could never live without you by my side. But then I spent so many nights thinking how you did me wrong. And I grew strong, and I learned how to get along. And we're back to A, and the circle closed. So look at that, we had an A minor chord, then a D minor, a fifth down, another fifth down to G, another fifth down to C major, another fifth down to F major, another fifth down to B diminished, another fifth down to E, and back to A. So it was a beautiful circle of diatonic fifths going within the key of A minor. As you can see, it's used in so many pop songs and so many tunes, and you can use this also in your own composition. And that's just another way to look at the circle of fifths. Now, apart from these two main features, there are lots of other visual elements of the circle of fifths. You can also visualize intervals on it, you can visualize chords. That's not a very important function, but as you can see, it's very easy to visualize these things on the circle of fifths. Well, I hope this video gave you a little bit of insight into the many different layers of the onion, the circle of fifths. If you have any more questions about it, leave them in the comments. Thank you for watching. See you soon.